Да. Все понятно, да, я себе так говорю тоже. Да, молодцы, молодой.
Человек, если верить карте, уже один, ну еще последнего. Он сам себя выдал. Ну, в принципе, все, теперь можем возвращаться. Я даже не буду там тесака, не тесака обыскивать. Думаю, в этом абсолютно нет смысла. Просто идем обратно. Ой, а кто-то напал. Это те самые Нет, это зомби. Просто там была речь о нападении сталкеров. Я и подумал, что уже, но нет. Все спасибо, все свободны. Ну, давай поговорим. Это было сложно, но я захватил эту станцию. 150 тысяч гаусс пушка. Теперь самое сложное. Тебе предстоит захватить главную базу сталкеров, Скадовск. Тебе поможет эта гаусс пушка. Искоренить неверных. Пока. Состоятельный клиент, получен достижение. Финальный бой попытаться решить мирным путем. Не понял? У меня не хватит сил, чтобы их убить. Надеюсь, смогу решить мирным путем. Серьезно? А то, что ты до этого замочил там кучу народу, ты думаешь, это схавнуть, что ли? Я не понял, мне дали гаусс-пушку, но патронов мне всего 10, зарядов. Ладно, пойдем поторгуем. В принципе, надо починиться, но этот техник, дуралей, вечно на кого-то агрится. Однако сейчас вроде нормально все. Ну тогда давай. Чиним. Все, отлично, починил. Теперь торговец. Но он не продает гаусс-патроны. Тоже непонятный прикол. Дали гаусс-пушку, а зарядов-то нет. Ну всего 10, ну что я сделаю с ними? Этот куда-то пошел, смотри. И вот в том-то минус, что на него нет метки. Он то может вот так уйти и все. А решиться надо было следующим образом, как я и говорил. Сделать так, чтобы лесничество мы заняли вместе. Чтобы они там где-нибудь около костра сидели, у них была там привязка. И они бы с этой точки, если и уходили, то возвращались обратно. А сейчас что? Вот он уйдет, и я потом его буду по всему этому искать. За тону. Классно. Да и вполне бы мне сил хватило с ними со всеми справиться. Тут есть отметка, торговец, группа сталкеров, Скадовск и... тут же нет нейтралов для меня, как я с ними буду договариваться. Здорово, народ! Все нормально? У Султана есть ко мне разговоры?
Иди бугру по ушам катайся, а мои не казенные.
Все понятно. Я предлагаю вашей базе сдаться и дать мне денег. 1500, и мы будем нападать на вас. А в случае отказа мне придется иссерить, что ли, хотели написать, всех неверных. Что? Ладно, мы сдаемся, держи. Просто я как будто смотрю сериал на НТВ. Выполнен, пока. И что, типа, они покинут эту базу? Такое чувство, что в конце разработчик такой, забодался я делать, они сдаются, все. Да я бы их и так замочил. Хоть бы выбор дали тебе. Узнал что-нибудь о сороке? Ну что, вот теперь-то все готово, затон захвачен. Молодец, теперь монолит будет в безопасности. И ни один неверный не сможет достигнуть ЧАЭС. На этом твоя миссия закончилась. Пока. Ну вот и все. Что вы еще хотели? Вот такой вот мод, коротенький, очень простенький. Я думаю, что либо человек пробует впервые что-то делать, либо, я не знаю, видно, что опыта мало. Разработчику хочу сказать, не опускай руки, делай дальше, учитывая ошибки, и все будет прекрасно. Ну и все, я на этом заканчиваю. Всем спасибо, всем пока.
Наоборот, нет, можно. Вот это есть, наоборот.
That's fantastic work, Anna. It it feels so right. You know, listening to this, listening to the mock-up and reading along, and it just has this kind of sense of inevitability to it. And that is when you know you have done your orchestration right. You know, the general shape of your proportions have really fallen into place. So, all the same, I think there are a few things I can help you with. So let's run through them, and you know, as before, I'll just take as much time as I need to explain everything, and we won't worry too much about you know, going over an hour or anything. These evaluations seem like they're going like hour and 15, hour and 30 minutes, that kind of thing. So, excuse me, it's very early in the morning here. So let's start out with the evaluation criteria, and you know, as usual, I have been need to sort of move some of my stuff around here on my desk. All right. So one thing I was really impressed by was how you were thinking about a lot of the same things that I was thinking, right? Almost reading my mind in a way. And, you know, addressing, like, for instance, the first concern, pitch weight, possibly feeling limited if the transcription is exactly like the piano part, you know, keeping the weight in the middle register of the piano. So you didn't do that, you expanded nicely. The next question is thematic material possibly sounding repetitive if orchestrated exactly the same way throughout. So this is kind of fun. Is that even though, for the most part, the upper winds are the same in both parts, the context around them is so different that it really feels like a different orchestration. In a sense, it is a different orchestration because of all the things that were added to it. And you know, I mean, people don't appreciate enough what a cool trick that is. That one approach in a certain group of instruments might work just as well when other things are added to it and at a louder volume. I also really loved the dynamic flux in here. You know, your willingness to drop the dynamic and so on. So we'll discuss this in detail in a second, but first I'm going to jump back and talk a little bit about your scoring of the harp. So I feel that right in here, you drop down a mezzo forte with your strings, and it's very light on the winds. It's just, you know, A2 flutes and piccolo. And the harp is audible, right? You can hear it in the mock-up, and it will be audible in like a live situation. So that's very nicely done. However, right in here, you know, you can mark it for triple F all you like, but the sound of the harp is just not loud enough to compete when you have brass and horns. Like horns, in the first place, the trumpets will, you know, the trumpets are doing something similar to the harp, so they will outweigh the harp in terms of their just their projection, and then the sound of the horns will absorb the sound of the harp, right? So it's like it's two different things fighting the harp. Like you have the projection of one instrument to worry about, and including others, right? And then you have the absorption of yet another instrument. So you know, like things like pizzicato and mallet instruments that, you know, like especially xylophone and so on, right? Those things absorb the sound of the harp, and also like this sort of this kind of cooler sound of the horns also takes away, you know, robs the harp of its ability to be heard. Now, right in here, you do have pizzicato going on at the same time. However, in this case, the harp is playing an octave higher than the instruments playing pizzicato, so that really helps a lot, I would say. So we will discuss the scoring in a little bit more detail, but let's jump back now to the first section right in here. We'll discuss the orchestration of these two mirror sections. So starting off here, nice and strong, you got your pew, 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 bum, 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 and I feel that the little melodic fragment here is nicely scored. You've got it doubling first and second oboe, and then piccolo an octave higher, and then violin, just firming up the winds. And then we've got these pizzicato double stops, the fifths and the sixths. Those are also very effective. And then, some of these pitches doubled, like the clarinets are doubling the violas and so on. So this is nice. It just gives it a little bit of a bite, right? The pizzicato here gives the winds a bit of a bite, and essentially it's scoring scoring out the right hand and the left hand as they're working together. Now I thought it was very, very nice that you didn't try to you didn't fall into that trap of tying the B, right? Of starting on a B and tying into an accent, right? That were in some scores. So it's good you avoided that. You foresaw that was going to be a problem, or maybe you just didn't even think about it and you did what was right to begin with. I don't know. So now that you've set this up and it's looking really, really good, now we look at this mirror section, and we've got the same pitches more or less spread across the string section in arco, right? And that works very well, I feel. And then adding to this, down there on this E, we've got bassoons. I would say that, like, if you're going to score all the way up to F here in bass clef, then there's no need to score these E's and F's in tenor clef before, right? But actually, this is kind of strange. You cut back to tenor clef here, so I would say get rid of this bass clef. No bassoonist will have any problem reading this low E in tenor clef. Okay, so if you're going to a bass clef here because you were worried about reading E, but that's really no problem. That's just the bottom space in tenor clef, right? So get rid of this, get rid of that. Just have a tenor clef all the way through. Okay, but let's go back to the scoring. So you've got this E, and the trumpets above, and then now here you've got this nice little harmony here in the horns. Yeah. Right, and you've got a key signature in your horns. I think you can get rid of your key signature here, right? So that this would be read as F sharp by the horn player and the conductor and everybody else. So yeah, just in this case, this kind of scoring, get rid of the key signature. All right. So you've got the E fifths outlined, and I think that'll work very nicely too, right? And this is nice, the contrast here in these two parts, like jumping down, right? It's very, very nice, and it sets this part up very, very well too. So everything is working here except for the harp, which just doesn't really need to play anything. There is nothing about this. It's superfluous in a sense, right? Now, I'm just going to point out one more thing to you, Anna, and you may have seen some of this in a previous evaluation, but so here you've got roles, and here you have not roles, right? You have no roles. So the thing about it is that harp will usually roll everything in this kind of situation, unless you tell them not to, right? If you say non-arpeggiando. But the thing about it is that sometimes rolls in a situation like this can be audible, right? So if you had a big, huge roll, a hand-over-hand roll where you really were covering 3 or 4 notes per hand, and it was really going across the harp. You know, you've heard that kind of playing, right? Kind of thing. Just really, it's almost like a magical spell. It's not something that you can do like this, like at a fast speed, like play on every single beat. But it still is something that has a chance of being heard, sort of like glissando. Or if the weight of this were lower, if the pitch weight of the orchestra were lower, then the harp could possibly play patterns or figuration above the orchestra. So that might be a possibility in certain circumstances. So that sort of figuration, big rolls, glissando, right? So all of that is audible, but what is not audible is playing chords without rolls, right? So the way that you've got this scored, this is not going to be audible just because it's so, because of everything else. But the harp trying to play against a big chord in the rest of the orchestra and playing without rolling, it's just as much as to make it invisible, right? The roll, having the pitches in the rolled chord happen at different times. That is what makes it audible, right? So when you take away the roll, then the harp just gets sucked into the texture of the orchestra and disappears, right? So I mean, it's fine if the harp adds to a texture, and but when the harp doesn't even add to the texture, right? It doesn't matter if the harp is there or not. Then you might as well leave the harp out, right? So that, I'm afraid that is what's going to happen here. Okay. So now let's go to to this next section with its criteria. So one of which is melodic development soaring quite high, and to the uppermost orchestral register, and the accompaniment figures covering a wide range of pitches. So we already discussed the accompaniment figures and the harp and so on. And here you're dividing up this figure between 3 different string instruments, and I think that's really powerful. It's really nice. Sorry about all my throat clearing. I know it's not the most beautiful thing to hear. So, right here you have got, it's an interesting approach. So you've got piccolo and flute playing in octaves, with the first violin supporting the lower part of the octave. Then here you sort of jump down an octave, or drop down an octave, with flutes and clarinet playing together, and then you come together at the end. So I would say that this is beautifully scored right here at the end. The piccolo coming in so that it gets that upper curve that goes all the way up to the D, without pushing the flute up to the same D, which is possible on flute, but it's just not very pretty, right? It's kind of an ugly sound, or not an ugly sound. It's sort of I don't want to say things are beautiful or ugly. That's a very subjective judgment, but it's a pitch that is not the most under control, right? It's not the most musical pitch. And here you have the violins joining in, and then the first violin jumping back up to get that D. Now your violins can come in, they can jump back to the upper octave earlier. If you wanted to jump back to A here, if you wanted to go A, D, E, A, F, B, right? You don't have to, these 2 pitches could be an octave higher if you wanted them to. Now, concern that I've got here is, are you spoiling? Are you giving away the surprise of going all the way up to the high D? You see, here, the piccolo is playing very, very high. It's playing an octave above these violin notes. These violin notes going all the way up to high G, and the piccolo goes all the way up to high G. So once the piccolo has gone all the way up to high G, then what's so surprising about this D? Do you see what I mean? Like, usually the proportions in your score are very, very well planned out of one section leading to another and one section contrasting another. But right in here, I would say, maybe you need to rethink this a little. Maybe the piccolo could be doubling the flute, and then right here, going to the, do you see what I mean? It just sort of feels like you are spoiling the surprise by going up to G here, and then the D here is no longer extraordinary, right? It's like, oh yeah, we're going up there high again, right? So the problem is that we lose this sense of suspense built into the line, right? Right, that final climb. Well, we've already been there now, right? So think about that. Is that something that you might want to change? But I love the dynamic changes inside here. I think that's nice. I think mezzo forte going down to mezzo piano is not very big of a change. I think people have started to comment, noticing the ways that I compare it from going from blah to blah. You know what I mean? It's like it's a dynamic that has less color going down to another dynamic that has even less color, right? So maybe if you drop down to piano, then you have somewhere to come from and really push into this fortissimo. Anyways, something to think about. One last thing I just wanted to mention right in here, that this feels a little fussy. This 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3, and then the solo comes in here. Maybe a better way to arrange this would be to have second and third play these, and then have second and first. So that way the first gets the bum 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 bum, and then back to second and third. And see here you don't have to go dun 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 dun, because that's not the melody. The melodic fragment is just dun 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 dun, right? It's not dun 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 dun. Don't feel like you have to go dun 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 dun. You don't have to do that, right? Same thing here. Yep, bum 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 bum. You don't have to finish. It is essentially, like you can just leave these out, right? It doesn't necessarily make the that's not the way the phrasing is running here. So it's right. It's
То есть
not
это как что-то, что тяжелое.
You see, so you don't have to think of the first as having to complete some sort of little phrase or some sort of little motive. That's not the case in here. So if you must break up the trumpets, then do it this way. Second and third to here, and then first and second to third, first and second, and then the first continuing on.